Hello, Mindy. Ashley, hello. Can you hear me? All right. Well, I'll give a few minutes there's a couple of people that said they were going to come. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? Yes. All right, perfect. I'm at home for the holidays, so hence the Christmas tree. And I got a terrible cold, so I feel really horrible. But anyway, we'll get through this. Hopefully I won't take up too much of your time. Mindy, I can't hear. Your mute is on. There we go.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
No, yeah.
Okay.
I was hoping that I'd be able to sneak in and nobody would join my presentation so I could just record and get out. Anyway, I won't take too much of your time today. We'll give it a couple more minutes here. There we go. How is everybody? Good? At work, at home, at work? I see Mindy, you're at work, it looks
I'm
like.
at work. Yeah, we're in the middle of the end of the semester. We're in the middle of our marking mayhem and final exams. So I'm happy I could squeeze this in.
Nice. Well, I just got back from vacation with my family. I have December off and we went to Mexico, but I came back and we all have bad colds. I don't know. I think it was the air conditioner, but anyway.
Oh, that makes sense. It happens to me every time I go down there.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, maybe I'll might as well just get started. It's 1:02. Hello, Ashley. Aaron, I believe it. Aaron McCready. And sorry. Hi. And I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Hi Young. Is that right? You're muted, so I don't know if I
Yeah,
can.
yeah. Hi, my name's Hayao.
Hello.
Oh,
Okay. So
I think it's, can you guys hear me?
yeah, I can now. Yeah. I'm gonna put the link to my Google Slides in the chat, and then I'll post them on Moodle as well. But anyway, they'll be there so you can, because there's some links and stuff like that that I've included in the Google Slides presentation that you guys can use later if you so choose. And there's a bunch of resource references at the end, so you can use those links as well. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. I'll just share all of it, because minimize that. Go into here. And I'm gonna just go into full screen and then I'll get started. So, and I'll minimize this. There we go. So my name's Jason LaChance, and this is for the PIDP 3340 collaborative classroom. Is it what is collaborative classroom? I don't know. Anyway, something like that. And my is on assessments for collaborative projects. All right. So here's my table of contents. We got types of group work assessments, and then a little bit on instructor assessments of group product, challenges in assessing group work, instructor-led student input assessments, strategy for fair evaluations, and then overcoming challenges in group work assessment. These are just going to be short little slides. So an overview. So as educators, we assign group projects to promote collaboration, critical thinking, teamwork. But before we create these projects, we need to look at our rubric and ask why we're creating them. So before you jump into creating the project, you must have a solid understanding of your course learning outcomes or goals. Your learning outcomes and goals will dictate your, if you're assessing process or product, or maybe a little bit of both. So process or product product is focusing on the final outcome, and the process focuses on the steps involved in creating the product. So your outcomes will tell you whether if you're assessing for process or for product. And if you're assessing for process, then it's going to be a formative type of formative assessment or formative feedback. And if you're assessing the product, that's the summative. So that's a summative assessment. So that's at the end, and formative happens during. All right. So when you know what you need to measure, then you can confidently create your projects. Now, creating projects for collaboration is a whole other thing, but I'm sure there's other people that are doing talks on that. So formative assessment is assessment for learning, and that happens during the project. So for when you're measuring process, formative feedback, and then it happens at least twice during a project with a group. And then if you're assessing product, then you will be using summative assessment, which is done at the end of the project, because it's assessment of learning, and it's assessing the product that the group has created. All right. So for the most part, group projects, you're going to be assessing you'll be assessing summatively, because you will be assessing the outcome or the product that the group is creating. But it is crucial that formative feedback happens at a minimum of twice throughout the project. In order to have an authentic assessment, in order to have an authentic assessment, I mean, you must have feedback is essential. So there's three types of, I'll go back here. Sorry, go back. One more, there we go. So formative assessment is when you are giving feedback to your students. It is planned and is an ongoing process. Educators use formative feedback to understand and improve student learning outcomes by supporting students in becoming self-directed learners. So there's three types of formative feedback that you can give during the project, and that can come from you have to kind of choose where you want the feedback to come from. And you can instructor, of course, from you, and then from their peers, students' peers, and then self-reflection. So instructor formative feedback is a valuable assessment tool and exposes students to new viewpoints and perspectives on course concepts, and to get feedback on their own work. By showing students their areas of strength and areas of which need to be developed, they can achieve a realistic awareness of their own performance levels or acquired knowledge. So ways that an instructor can deliver the feedback is by observation of the group, joining in with the group when they're meeting in class time, one-on-ones with each student in the group, and then viewing learning reflective journals, which we'll talk about in the self-reflection. So I've included a couple links, and I don't know if anybody here has put it online down. Ever used Adobe Educational Exchange before for any? So they kind of promote Adobe Express, and Adobe Express is a kind of a social media, but it does everything. There's you can do social posts, you can create web pages, and that's what I kind of use it for. I use it for my students to create learning journals. And you can also create, it's almost like a blog, so you can update it as you go. And my students will all send me the link at the beginning of the program. I call them learning journals, but they could be self-reflection reports, whatever. And once I have the link, I can just constantly go back and just check in on them and see where they're at during the process. So I have included, there's a link to the Adobe Educational Exchange offers free resources for educators, and you can get and they have like a ton of self-paced courses and stuff like that. And it's really like, here, this is a link to one of the, let me just minimize you guys here. This is just one of the free courses that they offer, and it's using Adobe Express to create formative. This is just the opening thing for it. I'll let it go.
Ever been teaching for a bit and realized that you aren't quite sure if all of your students are following your lesson? Formative assessments allow us to make on-the-spot, data-driven decisions regarding student learning. Then we can purposefully plan the next steps in our teaching. Formative assessment is quick, it's not graded, so it's low stakes, and it can be done anytime at the beginning, middle, or end of class, no matter what subject you're teaching. I'm going to teach you how to create quick and easy formative assessments for your students using Adobe Express in a unique way. All right, let's get creating.
So these are all like free, and there's a ton of, you can get teacher resources here for, it's from, you can do K-12 or you can do higher learning, so college, and there's a ton of, you can grab teacher resources, professional learning, these are all self-paced courses that you can take. And it doesn't matter if you're teaching math or science or whatever it is, like if I go in here and say, if I go in my teaching resources here, I can search, say, math. And then it'll give me all sorts of different tools that I can use to teach my class. So anyway, it's a free resource. I thought maybe you'd be interested in. You can just sign up for a free Adobe ID, and then you have access to Adobe Express. And you can create, and Adobe Express is really actually very cool. Like you can do social posts and all that, but you can also create web pages for your students, those that they can do the self-reflection. And then if you have the link, then they can constantly update it and you can follow them. You can also have access to a ton of AI tools. If you haven't yet played with AI, you can do, if you need like images for some report that you're doing or whatever, you can do text to image here. So it's just quick and easy tool. Like if we went and put a pink gorilla reading a book, or something like that, you can go in here and just generate that image for your project if you need to create some images. And it doesn't matter. You can choose art or you can choose a different way. So there we go, boom, like just like that. And if you want to, you can go say, go photo and then generate that. So if you want to get some good quality, like if you're searching for that perfect image, this is where you can just, it'll make it for you. So it's pretty awesome. And it's free, it's offered with, for educators, it's all free with Adobe. So check it out. And then, so next is the peer feedback. So peer assessment is a process in which students provide feedback to their other students. The purpose of the feedback is to help classmates improve their learning. Feedback is a learning activity, and student learning benefits when students receive feedback from and give feedback to their peers. Peer feedback can expose students to new viewpoints and perspectives and course materials, which may not be considered. It can be a valuable tool for instructors, help students find their ways to improve their work, and it provides students a chance to build sense of community and camaraderie. So in here, this is I actually took it to one step further. This is a Creative Commons peer self-assessment kind of group assessment tool, and it explains how you can how the students go about doing it. They do one for each peer in the group, and it's all here. Now you can download this resource, and I turned it into a digital one, so you can actually, you don't have to photocopy it or print it out. You can just share it amongst your students in your learning management system. When you download it, this will all be fillable forms so that you can share it with your students, and you can change this if you like in your PDF viewer. So I'll have the link to this Google slide so you can grab that there. So it's really important that peer assessment requires classroom culture characterized by supportive, collaborative relationships that lead to feelings of mutual trust among the students. This is really important when you're trying to do feedback amongst the students. So in such a classroom culture, students understand that they share responsibility for their own and their peers' learning, and that part of this joint responsibility is to provide constructive, respectful, and non-judgmental feedback. Teacher modeling is really important role in establishing a culture for peer assessment, as do the structures, opportunities, and expectations for collaboration that the teacher provides and sustains through constant monitoring. So I did put a Creative Commons link here that I found online that dives into this a little bit more. It's quite good. It's a PDF that you can download and have a look at. It's got a ton of information. I found this really insightful. And there's also the self-reflection. So students self-reflect means students have a chance to evaluate their own strengths and weaknesses and establish a path of positive self-evaluation. That importantly includes speaking about any negatives. This helps students to track their own achievements and progress, promotes ownership of their work and growth, and allows students to analyze their own learning. Self-reflection can be utilized as an efficient form of formative assessment, having their students engage in metacognition. So this is this is just a link to like one of my learning journals, but it could be a self-reflection report, and you can do it all for free through Express, and you can just have access to it. And it's kind of nice because they can add images, or they can just write, or whatever they'd like, and it's super easy to do, and they can update their links at all the time for you if you want to check it out. Student reflection allows them to take an inventory of where they are and determine the learning strategies they need to do to achieve their goal. Metacognition cycle emphasizes these 5 steps. So assessing the task, evaluating the strengths and weaknesses, plan your approach, assert strategies, and reflect. So I got some more information on this part of it from the University of Saskatchewan. And so you can check out that information here on this page if you so choose as well. So those are kind of like the feedback part of it. That's formative feedback. So that happens during, and then next we'll talk about summative, but some of the challenges assessing group work. So assessing group work presents several challenges that include equity and assessment. So you're ensuring fair evaluation of individual contributions within a group dynamics. So this is a whole talk on itself that I've learned. All this is new to me. Group dynamics, understanding and accounting for variable team dynamics and participation levels, assessing soft skills. So you're evaluating tangible skills like communication, leadership, teamwork, and then avoiding bias, so minimizing personal bias when evaluating group members. So a summative assessment, this is the assessment of learning. So the other was assessment for learning. This is assessment of learning. So this is assigning a grade to the final product. And summative assessment can be done just by the instructor, or you can allow for student input into, so instructor driven and student input. Remember that it is crucial that formative feedback happens throughout the project. So it doesn't, even if your learning outcomes or your goals say that, it's going to be products, so you're assessing summatively, you still need to have that formative feedback at least twice throughout the project. In order to have that authentic summative assessment, formative feedback is essential. Okay. So here's 3 types of just instructor assessments. So there's the shared group grade, and the shared group grade is probably the easiest one. It's kind of like it encourages group work. It's a sink or swim type of assessment, and it's a straightforward method, right? It's like everybody in the group gets 1 grade. The disadvantages, I guess, would be individual contributions are not necessarily reflected in the work, and stronger students may be unfairly disadvantaged by weaker students or vice versa. The next one is group average grade. So this is where you grade everybody, and then they take the average of all the grades, and it provides motivation and focus for both individual and group work. But the disadvantage may be perceived as unfair. Stronger students disadvantaged by weaker students, very similar to the other. And then individual grade for allocated tasks. So this one is not necessarily, there's no group grade. This one is just, you provide tasks for the final project from each student, and they get graded on that task. Now, it's ensuring participation. It's motivational and potential for a reward for outstanding effort, but some of the disadvantages to that would be difficulty exact equal tasks, does not encourage your group collaboration, and then some tasks may depend on other tasks, so the students will have to wait before they can finish theirs. It is important that you have a product rubric for outlining the criteria that will be assessed. And I think it's really also very important that maybe we inform the students of why they are doing this group work. Like, you're going to learn this and this and this, and be really upfront with them about it. So you want to be very transparent with about the project and what they're going to learn before you start. And then, of course, having a clear rubric for each one of these outcomes. So the next one I want to mention is individual, group, product, and group process. So this is where it actually helps with a lot of technical stuff. So if you have, like, you can use Adobe Express if you wanted to, and the group needs to document. They track all of the debates and meetings, and they document through minutes and platform chats. They summarize all the individual contributions. Group processes that are submitted to the instructor based on hard data documentation that they've collected throughout the project. And then instructor assigns 3 marks. So you do an individual contribution, a group process, and a final product based on the rubric. So 20%, let's just say 20% individual, 30 group, and then 50 final product. And that would be, sorry, group participation, like group process, not group projects. And the 50% would be the group product. All right. So these 3 here. So the first 3 that I did were kind of just instructor. These ones here is where you're allowing the peer or the student to have a little bit of input into their mark. So it's group product, which is always going to be based on the rubric that you create. And then the first one is student self-assess on contribution. So each student completes a self-report on contribution to the group process. Both the self-report and final product are assessed by the instructor. So you could do like individual 20% for the self-assessment contribution, and then 80% for the final product. And then group product with individual tasks. So it's the same as the first individual task. They all have tasks, but you give them one group grade for the final product, and then you give them a grade for their individual task. And then the third one would be group product with student assessing their peers' contributions. So each student completes a peer assessment like the one that I provided for you. And they can then for each of the group, instructor reviews peer assessments. All of these are, of course, the onus is on the instructor to give the final grade. So these are just input. It's not necessarily what the student will get if you decide that it's not correct. All right, so student distribution of pool of marks. So this is a little different. So this is like instructor awards a set of number of scores. The group decides how many points are allocated to each student in the group. A rationale is written to the instructor who makes the final decision about the grade assigned to each student. So if you say the group got 80, like I have here, 80 out of 100, and there's 4 students, that's 320 points to be distributed. No student can get less than 0 or more than 100. And if they all decide they did even work, then they all get 80%. If some feel like one did say maybe a little bit more, so then they could each give that person 5 points. So they take 75 and the one person would take 95. So it's easy to implement. It motivates students. It creates negotiation skills, become part of the learning, and then reward for outstanding contribution. It's always usually perceived as fair by the students, but some of the disadvantages to it would be open to subjective collaborations, may lead to conflict, fosters competition, counterproductive to teamwork, of course, and then students may not possess negotiation skills. So, you kind of have to negotiate at the end if you feel like, no, I deserve this or whatever, and that might not be fair to some students because they might not have those skills. This next one is kind of similar to that. This is a student allocated individual weighting. So you could do it the same way. You give a weighting. The students can allocate their peers' grade ranges from 0.5 to 1.5. So if you give them 80, then like a 1 would be 80. But if you say they get a 1.2, then they get 96. And then below 80 would be, like, say 0.75 would be 60. So this one's a little harder, but it's got the same kind of disadvantages and advantages as the first, as I just mentioned. So can be open to subjective collaborations, may lead to conflict, foster competition, counterproductive to teamwork, and students may not possess negotiation skills, but it's usually always perceived as fair, easy to implement, motivates students, creates negotiation skills, and rewards for outstanding contribution. So strategies for fair evaluation. So these are things that you always got to think about. So ensuring fairness as assessing group is establishing clear expectation and guidelines at the project's outset. So making sure that you go through that rubric and you talk about what is expected from the group. Incorporating the self and peer evaluations, multiple perspectives on individual contributions, provide opportunities for students to communicate concerns about the group dynamics. So if there is a problem when you're doing those first assessments that you're doing during the project, then you can find out if there's a problem and you can go in. There is some other ways of assessing when you could give a group grade and then you have flags where you can do a yellow flag or a red flag, and then if somebody gets a red flag, that means they're out of the group. And that's another way, but I didn't get into that one because I've never used it. But there's a ton more evaluation strategies assessment strategies, sorry, that you can check out. Providing constructive feedback to facilitate learning and improvement always. So that's, of course, very important. Rubrics. So as I mentioned, developing clear rubrics outlining criteria for assessment, focusing on both process and product, if that's what it says in the course outline or course goals. I did find this Creative Commons link to a collaborative rubric that you can kind of change and make your own. You can have a look at it anyway. It's for group projects, and I've used a little bit of it. I've used a little bit of it in my own rubrics, so I thought I'd include it. Addressing challenges. So encouraging open communication among group members to resolve conflict and improve collaboration. Regular check-ins and progress assessments to identify, address issues early on. So if you're maybe observing the group or if you're joining the group, you'll be able to see these things during the beginning of the project. Training students on effective teamwork and communication skills. That's really important, and it's time consuming for the instructor, but it's really important if you're going to be doing peer feedback, evaluation, formative feedback. And then utilizing technology for collaborative work and assessment, such as online platforms for peer evaluation. So you can use like Adobe Express, or you can use what other Google Classroom or whatever you'd like for that. And those are my resources that you can have links to all the information that I got. And I think that is all I have to say to you let me just take stop share. There we go. Well, that wasn't too bad. I did do like 20 minutes. Anybody have any questions for me? I don't know if I'll know the answer, but I'll give it a shot. Muted.
I don't have any questions, but it was really well done. I do a lot of group work with my students, and sometimes it can be really difficult, especially when you're figuring out like different group dynamics.
Yeah.
I tend to do a lot of classroom settings where I pick the groups instead of letting my students just kind of automatically form into their own little clique.
Choosing groups is a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very tough. And I teach for the School of Hospitality and Tourism. So for us, it's not only just for projects, but it's also part and parcel to teach them that, you know, in the real world, sometimes you don't always work with people that are exactly like you, and trying to navigate different interpersonal relationships. Right. And it's kind of funny how you watch everything come to fruition after that.
Yeah, I find that I usually always choose the groups. I teach in the graphic design department. So I teach technical things. Like I actually got into teaching because I was doing photography, and for years and then I thought, oh, you know, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what happens to my images. So I took the program that I teach in now. And then they asked, when it got to the kind of the photography and video part of it, they asked I kind of took over for the instructor because I knew a little bit more. So they asked me back the next year, and then the program grew into now a diploma program. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, like when I choose, I usually try to, because I'll do like a assessment of, so like I say we're learning After Effects, I'll be like, has anybody used this before? Then I can kind of determine, who has a little bit of knowledge. Then I try to kind of group them into brand new ones, and then have one person in there. I don't know, sometimes they say that's not a good thing either, because then that one person that knows a little bit more has to do a lot more work. So, but I always let them know on the side that I'll take that into consideration, because I know that they're doing a little bit of my work for me with the group, you know? Yeah. Anyway,
I have, oh. Yeah, I was gonna ask a question. Yeah, this is not so much like assessment, but yeah, speaking of the group, like when you design, when you form a group, like do you do like purely like randomly, or how do you actually?
well, like what I'll do is I kind of do it like a number thing. So I'll go through and I usually wait to form the group to like say, we have a little bit shorter, we don't do like a full term for each course that we teach. For first year students, they take a lot of courses. So they're like 8 weeks long or sometimes 6 week long. It depends on the course. And then what I'll do is I'll spend the first week with them, and then I give them a number score. So I kind of can give them where they're at on, like, say between 1 and 5 of knowledge of that program that we're using, or the knowledge of the subject that we're that we're teaching. And then I kind of take the 5s and put them, you know, randomly into a separate group. So I kind of have an idea, and I go 5 right down to 1 with each group. That's how I do it. But maybe and I've read a lot of things that say you should let the students form their own groups, but I found that works for me anyway. And the people that know a little bit about it, actually kind of, you can tell, especially if I take them aside and say, look, I'm going to put you, and maybe you can be project lead. And then they get to learn a different soft skill as well. So. All right.
Jason, I was just wondering, is there a specific method of group assessment that you use most often in your teaching when you're doing like summative assessments? And then did you
yeah,
learn anything in this?
I'll do an individual. I always do the learning journal. So
Okay.
I will view the learning journal as kind of like the self-reflection part of it, and I'll give them a mark for that. Like, so I'll do like 20%, and then it's a group project. So I always like lay onus on the 80% on the product, because it's kind of a graphic design, you know, it's all about the product that you're producing for the clients. So we try to keep our classrooms like a graphic design studio. So we do have meetings like in the class, and we have different rooms. And so I will jump around from room to room to room. So yeah, but yeah, usually I'll do 80% for the product and then 20% individual, or sometimes even I leave out 5% for participation, but that's always a hard one to assess, as far as like if you're keeping it as a separate mark, especially if it's only like 5 or 10%. So usually I'll just kind of take that out and put it as part of the group product.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a really good presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I had a couple technical difficulties, so I don't know if I missed this one portion of it, but when you brought up the student distribution of pool of marks, have you used that yourself?
No, I haven't. That's just one that I found when I was doing my research for this assessment. I've never actually used that. I've never used either one of those ones where students decide how they're going to distribute the marks. I find it, well, for one, it'd be difficult for me to, you know, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it works for some classes, but for mine, it would be a little bit difficult. But I guess you just give them, like, when I read about it, I was like, okay, so you have a group mark, 80 out of 100, but how did you come up with that 80 out of 100? You know what I mean? If you haven't already assessed the group individually and expect them to distribute it. And you also will know, because by doing all of the assessments up until then, you'll know who's been participating the most and been putting the most work into the project, right? So yeah, I find that I guess it would give the students a little bit, feel like they're controlling their mark, but I don't think it works I haven't used it yet anyway. Have you, anybody else ever tried that? No. I think the one I usually do, like I say, it's like 80% is for the product because of the course that I'm teaching, and then 20% is individual. And I pretty much use that straight across the board for all the different projects that I do with my students. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thanks.
But I mean, you know, there's more out there, I guess, but yeah. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining me on this presentation, and I guess I'll stop the recording.
Thank you.
Anybody have any no more questions? Okay.
Thanks, Jason. That was really informative.
Thank you very much. I hope so. You can, like I said, that the link is in the chat, and I'll post it on Moodle as well if you want. If you didn't catch the links to those, because those the additions that I added, the resources and all that are really good resources. So check it out. Have you guys done your presentation yet? Anybody?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. It's of course, you're always going to want to watch someone's presentation, because why wouldn't you? Who wants to write an essay? I was like, oh no, of course you're going to watch the presentation. Then I looked at the thing and I'm like, oh, there's only 2 of us on there. Oh no. When I went to, it was only me and she was awesome. She was really good. But yeah, anyway, well, good luck with the rest of your course. Are you guys near the end of your PIDP or?
Yeah.
Just electives.
Just electives?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just electives and the capstone for me.
Yeah, this is the last elective I have, but I still haven't done the first one, 3100. That's the only one I haven't done. So I don't know why. It seemed like it was too much reading. So I've left
It is a lot of reading.
But I thought, okay, I'll take it at the end because maybe I'll have a little bit better insight into how this all works. So yeah, I'm going to do that next. Then I'm going to do my capstone. So I should be done this year sometime anyway. Or next year sometime anyway. Before the end of next year, I've committed to it.
Nice.
And they've changed the capstone now too. It's only got like a 3-month window or something like that to complete. So that's,
Yeah.
I think it was a year. And up till now, and then they actually just changed I had started the PIDP and it was only just the 7 courses that you had to take. You didn't have to take the electives, and then they brought in the electives. And they said to me, well, because it's been like you only get a 5-year window, and I was in like year 4. They're like, you're gonna have to take the electives. I'm like, oh, okay. But
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
found that some of the electives aren't even, their schedules aren't up for some of them as well. And I'm like, come on, I'm like, these are the ones, because I deal with predominantly international students. So a lot of it is about language in the classroom and stuff like that. Like out of my 300 and something students, like 98% of them are not from Canada.
Right.
So like dealing with that collaboration in the classroom has always been an interesting.
That threat from the government saying that they try to cap all the international students guy. I mean, like, oh no, please don't do that.
That's what I said. I'm like, I have so many students when they just announced it that they were doing, you had to have like a $20,000 minimum in your bank account plus your tuition fees. I just sit there and I think about some of my
Who has
students.
$20,000 in the bank account?
Well, I have students from Nepal that come from, villages that don't have electricity. I'm like, how are they supposed to have $20,000 in the bank account?
Yeah,
Like, this is insane.
And what's the point of that $20,000? I mean, really, if it's about housing, that shouldn't matter how much money they have. It's about the housing, not the students' money bank. It's silly.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.